So, while PGA Tour and LIV Golf players have expressed their concerns about the ongoing rift in the game, one golfer in particular has always had a lot to say. The world number one, Rory McIlroy, has always criticized LIV's chief executive Greg Norman whenever he has the opportunity. And being the kind of person Norman is, he hardly hesitates to hit back at Rory. So, what could Rory have possibly said to trigger a savage response from Greg Norman to the extent that he had to drop a Twitter bomb? Keep an eye out for more details. It's no news that there's an ongoing civil war in the golf world, and this time LIV's commissioner and chief executive officer Greg Norman has hit back at the current number one on the official golf world ranking, Rory McIlroy. If there's anything Norman is known for, it's his aggressive disposition and the propensity to lash out at whoever he feels deserves it, especially when you do something to provoke his response, and that's pretty much what Rory did. It all started when Bryson DeChambeau and Dustin Johnson announced their commitment to the PGA Tour. Like most other players on the Rebel Tour, the golfers initially stated they had no interest in the Saudi-backed league. McIlroy was then asked to comment on the matter. The Irishman attacked the Renegade Series in a response to the reporter's query on whether the breakaway series threat had been deflected. After his final round at the Genesis Invitational in February, Rory McIlroy remarked, "So, who's left? Who's left to go? I mean, there's absolutely no one. In my opinion, it's dead in the water. I don't see why anyone would go." McIlroy's words came a few hours after DJ and DeChambeau, who were considered prime targets for the breakaway series, both reiterated their commitment to the PGA Tour. To McIlroy, who at the time served on the PGA Tour's policy board, those words of reassurance significantly diminished the threat of the possible upstart league. He also said he was never truly worried about LIV upending the world of professional golf to poor leadership choices and never having the blessings of one of golf's greats, Tiger Woods. But just a few months after Rory claimed that the Saudi-funded series was dead in the water, his words came back to haunt him. The breakaway circuit led by Greg Norman made its move in the golf world, topping it off by announcing the signing of top-ranked PGA talents, including the then world number 2 and Open champion Cam Smith, Phil Mickelson, Brooks Koepka, and most importantly, Dustin Johnson and Bryson DeChambeau. Due to the golfer's desertion, Rory was obligated to make critical remarks about the Greg Norman-led circuit. With his statement about being dead in the water, Norman responded critically to the Northern Irish golfer. The 67-year-old took to Twitter, where he remarked that LIV Golf had gone from being dead in the water to becoming a crucial component in the game's future in just 8 months. Hashtag LIV Golf is merely getting started. In addition, Norman predicted that the series would soon exert a major force in the golf world, and the big forces in golf should prioritize the improvement of the sport that they all love. He concluded, at LIV Golf INV, will keep doing its part. Of course, the tweet looks straightforward, favoring the LIV Golf series, but trust golf fans. They were swift to pick up on the connection. Apparently, it was a jab at LIV's fierce opponent, Rory McIlroy, who had initially used the phrase, dead in the water. Rory shouldn't be blamed for using that phrase initially because, looking back a year ago, who would have believed the series would have come this far? There was a time when everyone literally took digs at Norman for spearheading a somewhat failed venture, which appeared to have no blueprints on how to go about the series in such a way as to rival the PGA Tour or even sign players, and not just any players, the ones who would make a switch and the golf world would go crazy. But guess what? He did, and right now, he's the center of attraction. When McIlroy saw potential in the upstart series, he was quick to call a meeting with 22 other PGA Tour players, including Tiger Woods, to discuss the future of the PGA Tour. Rory said he cared deeply about the sport, its history, legacy, and integrity, hence the need to meet with like-minded players who shared his views. For him, the best thing was to sit them down at a round table and discuss the way forward. He said, "We all had to sit down and discuss what was best for the tour going forward. We asked ourselves what we could do so that in decades to come, the PGA Tour will still be thriving." Well, maybe Norman was having a cup of coffee when the meeting was ongoing, because only a few weeks later, LIV Golf snatched a couple more players, some of whom were even in the meeting. However, this is not the first time Greg Norman has called out Rory McIlroy for his hypocritical stance. The verbal altercation between the former Australian pro golfer and the world #1 over LIV Golf has occurred before. In several instances, both players have made critical remarks about one another. There was an occasion when Rory gave his opinion about the Saudi-backed series, and Norman responded by calling him a hypocrite. Rory had apparently said LIV was damaging the game, but Greg wasn't going to have any of that, and there was no better word to call him than a hypocrite. Greg urged McIlroy to reevaluate his position on the breakaway series, and also slammed him for operating in a one-sided manner by accusing other players of joining LIV Golf. "Well, my point is, Rory, you're an independent contractor," Greg Norman remarked in an interview with Piers Morgan on Rory McIlroy's attack on LIV players. "You have the authority to make your own decision." Remember, Rory began his European tour. Then Rory chose to quit the European tour to play where all the money is, on the PGA Tour. Don't blame the other players for making a choice. It's a pity that people have adopted this viewpoint. Looking back through time, they've done the same thing. Since then, the two have had several verbal spats, the most recent being Norman's tweet. So it begs the question, why have they always been against each other, and for how long? Even while the 67-year-old is not a favorite of PGA Tour fans, perhaps none more than world #1 Rory McIlroy, the two had a protracted spat, maybe due to McIlroy's position as one of the players who are now most adamantly opposed to LIV Golf. One message stood out with Rory McIlroy during his interview at the DP World Tour Championship. He said he believed Greg should leave. "I believe he just needs to exit stage left," he said. Rory was referring to Greg Norman's role as CEO of LIV and claimed that his continued stay in office would hinder any form of synergy between LIV Golf and the PGA Tour. McIlroy also said that unless there was an adult in the room, there would likely be no compromise while Norman was in charge of LIV Golf. That much was obvious. McIlroy had criticized Norman before, so this was hardly a new attack, although there are several apparent reasons why PGA Tour players would criticize LIV's commissioner. There is more to this specific dispute than meets the eye. Rory explained its origins in a lengthy conversation with Paul Kimmage in an interview with The Independent. He said that his comments against the hypothetical breakaway league in February 2020 marked the beginning of the conflict, as Arnold Palmer had done in 1994 when he fought back against Greg Norman's planned World Golf Tour. He claimed he wanted to be on the right side of history. Rory said Norman wasn't too happy about it. Despite getting into a heated argument, he still wanted to reach out to him after watching a documentary on Norman's 1996 Masters grief. Rory said he messaged Norman to congratulate him for being brave irrespective of its outcome, while thanking him for reaching out the same way after his Augusta meltdown in 2011. According to McIlroy, he saw it as an olive branch. Norman reacted with a nice note, and there was a brief respite that didn't last long. A couple of weeks later, Norman gave an interview to the Washington Post claiming that Rory had been brainwashed by the PGA Tour. According to McIlroy, he said, "I'm like, for F's sakes, that's what he said about me after our extremely good back and forth." However, this proved to be Rory's pivotal moment. He continued, saying he would make it his mission from this point on to be as big of a pain in Norman's arse as possible, and basically that's what he's been doing ever since. However, Norman feels unconcerned as his focus remains on establishing LIV Golf as a foremost rival to the PGA Tour, and honestly, he is good at what he does. But do you think Norman is doing a good job with LIV Golf? And how long do you see one of golf's biggest feuds lasting? And we'll catch you in the next one.